All right. Good morning.
Morning, Ray.
So, Ted, you told me something the other day that stuck with me. You said start with the ending. So let's do that.
Yeah,
If somebody listens to this conversation all the way through, what would be the one thing that you'd like to leave them thinking about?
like I said the other day, 10 things scientists don't want you to know, right? And that's really it's funny, man. We want you to know everything. I'm a scientist. I want you to know. That's why I publish my books. And not my books, but like my research. I put it out there so people can read it. So the ending is always we want you to know. We want you to know everything. We want people to get better and deeper understanding of the world in which they live.
Yeah,
So maybe that's the part, right? The more we understand about the world, the easier it is to navigate it.
love it. All right. Well, welcome to the best cup of coffee. The whole idea came from my sponsor, LB, who used to tell me, come on, it's time for the best cup of coffee. And usually that meant we were hitting a meeting or we were going to sit down, talk. And somewhere in that conversation, I was going to probably learn something either that day or somewhere down the road about myself. So that's really what I wanted these conversations to be. Nothing fancy, just two people sitting down over a cup of coffee. Today, I'm actually sitting with my friend, Dr. Ted Bobak. Um,
That's me.
so rather than me trying to tell everybody who you are, why don't you give us a clue about who you are today?
Yeah. And that's a good question. I've been reflecting on who am I? At one level, I'm just a guy who's really interested in learning about the human experience, right? Uh, Another is that I'm committed to daily growth. Like you say, the daily reprieve. If that's all I got, then I want to make the best of it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm also obsessed with understanding what makes people tick. What gets them out of bed in the morning, and then what carries them through today, and whether or not they're able to lay their head on that pillow and go to sleep and be like, I gave it all I could, right? Like a guy sliding into home, right? Like
Charlie Hustle. Yeah,
yeah,
Charlie Hustle.
pants are dirty, maybe ripped, man, but I made it home. The guy didn't tag me out. It was a close call, but I got it in. Now I could go to bed, right?
Yeah,
Um,
love it.
I know what it's like to search for meaning, and I know what it feels like to drift aimlessly through this
Hmm.
world without a purpose,
Yep.
and I've come to uh, depend or rely on that tether of human connection to get me through the difficult times, right? And I learned that, in the place where we met in the rooms, right?
Yeah.
And like you were saying, my official title is Doctor or Professor Bobak, and that just means that I've devoted a significant portion of my life, and I spent or spend my time studying recovery, right? In all its manifestations. I don't just keep it to substance or all that, any kind of recovery that people are making, right? I also study social network systems and that human experience piece that I talked about that I'm so fascinated with. And I've been blessed with this brain that's like hardwired, like I was telling you the other day, to connect the dots, right? So for example, physical pain to emotional isolation. I see the bridge there, right? The discipline and grace, right? I could see how
Right.
those two are connected, right? Or how we treat others versus how we feel about ourselves, right? Like you
A
can't
big
pour
one.
from it. Yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup. And if
Yeah.
I'm empty, I'm going to start treating and seeing the world as empty. And that's the way that goes, right? So what's in my heart? I believe that, like I wrote the other day, the grace, like I mentioned, the grace is a gift, right? The truth is something that is waiting to be discovered. We just got to be ready and open-minded to let that truth seep in. And I believe that wisdom is something that comes through lived experience, right? Uh, we learn from our mistakes as we go. And I've noticed that the same mistakes will keep repeating themselves over and over until we learn the lesson that they came to teach, right? And only then are we free to move to the next mistake. And making mistakes is what makes us human, right? And something else that I heard in the rooms is I don't really believe so much that we're human beings trying to be spiritual as much as we're spiritual beings trying to learn to be human. That's the part I think that big change is that I'm trying to be human and I'm spiritual. So naturally, I'm fighting these, the wolves inside of me. And I could tell you that analogy in a little bit about the two wolves, but you know, so in summary, to answer your question, right, and a question maybe that you didn't ask, who am I and why am I here, right? Like I'm somebody who cares deeply about helping people build lives, exist within the spaces that they've created, and to flourish within the routines that get them through these days, right? Like we're creatures
Love
of
it.
habit at the end of the day,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
I want people to thrive to the peak of human existence, the best experience possible. And I say with meaning and purpose for all, right? And miniature American flags for everyone else.
So let me ask you this. You
That was
talked
a
to me about the
Simpsons quote,
pet.
by the way. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was never a big Simpson early on when it was after the Bundys on
Yeah.
Sunday, 80s or something. But
Yeah. I
uh,
don't watch it anymore, but that was an old line from The Simpsons about the
we
miniature
should be
flags.
watching it because apparently they give away the winning lottery numbers every once in a while.
Yeah.
So you had talked to me about the pattern recognition and your brain
Yeah.
being one of your strengths. Is that something that you've kind of always known about yourself? Did it more manifest once you got in the rooms? Let's go down there a little bit.
Hmm. I think it is something that I've always had an idea of that it was there. The difference that happened in the rooms was that I realized that other people don't necessarily have it, and
Yeah.
that my belly button is not the center of the universe, right? That was a big one, that people don't see exactly the same things as I see, right? So I can hold this sign up and ask you what you see, right? You probably would say maybe the Pepsi logo, some baseballs, this, right? Well,
Yep.
that's not true for me, right? I see something completely different. That
Yeah,
was
and
the
that's what I want to get back to. You hit something spiritual two by four between the eyes for me
hmm,
was with this best cup of coffee and LB. He used to say lucky bastards. He used to say we are some lucky bastards. But that was contingent on the work that we were doing in the rooms. And just similar, what really triggered made me remember was when you held up that baseball on my side, blue on this side, and then red on your side. But we're in the same space having a conversation, and he's sharing his experience. And especially in the beginning, and even today, I mean, it's that willingness to be able to look at somebody else's perspective without trying to trample all over it. You know what
yeah,
I'm saying? Because then that heightens my side of where the growth part. It ends up heightening my side of where I've been, what I'm doing, and then where we're going. So
yeah.
that's an important component for me.
I have a story about that. It's more like a parable or an allegory. You want to hear it?
Yeah, bring it.
So, so there's a couple of they bring some men out, right? They're standing in a line. The thing, they're all blind. So you got five guys blind standing, and somebody walks out and they have an elephant, right? Elephant standing there. Blind guys come, and one guy is at the front of the elephant, right? Touching the tusk. He's like petting, touching the tusk. The other guy's in the back. He's got the tail with the hair at the end, right? One guy's on the end next to the leg, pushing. And the other guy, the last guy over there by the tusk, right? So each one of them is feeling something else of the elephant. The guy with the tusk, right? The elephant's just not moving, right? The
Yep.
guy's feeling the tusk. He's like, man, it does kind of feel like a baseball bat. Thin on one end, fat. He's like, man, I think somebody left their baseball bat here or some kind of club. The guy with the hair, at the end, he's like, man, I don't know what this is, but it could be, the top of a, doll or something, it could be some kind of string here. Maybe it's a whip. I don't know. Maybe I got a whip. The guy over there's got a baseball bat. What do they bring us tools or make us
Yeah.
fight to the death? What's going on here? one guy at the tusk, you know what I mean? He's like, man, it's pointy. It's some kind of weapon. They're all getting scared. And he finally, they're like, well, who's right? Who's actually got the whole picture? Nobody was
Right.
right. Nobody thought it was an elephant. Everybody had different parts. So
Right.
there's a lot of examples we could pull from that story. One of them is that what you were saying, right? Being able to look at somebody else's and not shut them down. Yeah, you're wrong, man. And another part is that, everybody has a different perspective on things, and doesn't mean they're right or wrong. It just means that it's different than me, right?
Yep.
And your ability to wave your arms and crazy, right? Your ability and your freedom to do that is where my nose begins. You
Yeah.
cannot start hitting me in the face, because
Right.
at that point I will be forced to defend myself, right?
Right.
So
Right.
you're flail all you want, man, as long as you're in your own lane, right? And I would tell people that I would disagree with, like, man, just live comfortably in your delusion and allow me to live comfortably in mine. Because,
Bingo.
like, I don't know that I'm right and I don't know that they're right, but I know that this disagreement isn't going to get us anywhere. That doesn't
And I
mean I don't
think,
have disagreements.
right. And I think finding those similarities, again, whether it's at that moment, when I'm at the tusk or I'm at the tail or whatever it is, and then, us coming together and then going, this is what the tusk is. This is the tusk's point of view from me. And this is what the tail's point of view is from whoever's on the tail. And I think, you know, in those learning moments, if I could get there, like I said, whether I realize it at the time or somewhere down the road, those end up being pretty big moments for me.
Yeah. I took a biology class in college early on, and that's not my thing at all, right? But the professor, so it brings up like this story. This kid had a frog, right? And came home and nobody wanted anything to do with the frog. Like, get it out of here. And the big brother, took the frog and he's like, I'll watch it. And, at night he had that biology class, right? And we had to dissect a frog. And he's like, I got a frog. So he cut the frog, he dissected it, he took the pictures, he posted them all. He got an A grade, right?
Right.
And then he put all the parts back in a bag and he gave it to his brother. He's like, man, here's your frog back. What's the
Love
problem?
it. Love
All
it.
the pieces are there. What's the
Yeah.
problem?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even if you have all the pieces and you are the tusk, the tail, the leg, the everything, so
Yep.
what? If you can't put them together, if you can't connect those dots, so what that you got all the parts? Something, the essence of life is still missing.
Bingo.
REM said, if you believe they put a man on the moon, and
Yeah.
if you believe there's nothing up there to see, then nothing is cool. Nothing is cool.
All right. So, has there been a time when you could see the pattern in somebody else's life, but then, we don't get to see it in our own?
It's a good question, Ray. Hmm. There have to be. I don't.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
way that I can see everything about myself. What is it that we can't spot self-deception on our own?
With the
That's
delusion, right? If I'm delusional, hello.
yeah. And I've practiced all sorts of spiritual practices, right? Buddhism I dove pretty deeply in, and I still consider myself part of that, spiritual practice. But delusion is one of the obstacles that prevents us from ever becoming enlightened. The other two are clinging. I hold on to something that I should have let go on, right? Everything that I let go of has claw marks on it, right?
Yeah.
And the other one is clinging aversion that shouldn't be happening to me, right?
Right.
Denying the experience that I'm having, right? I shouldn't be having these feelings, right? And the other one is delusion. Those are the three obstacles that prevent us from moving forward in our spiritual practice, right? So your question was whether or not I can see it. I see it in others, right? I could answer this question a couple different ways. So I see it in others, and I learned through trials and tribulations that I do not need to step in unless I am asked, right?
Right.
And
Yep.
now being married, this is also, my wife is just an absolute angel. And I wanted to say, if this goes onto the video, that I am a very you said lucky, I say fortunate, very fortunate to have met her, right? She keeps me grounded. She doesn't blow smoke. She doesn't, no sunshine's rain. She tells me like it is when I need to hear it. But um, I've learned through being married and through, interacting with folks that uh, I can ask them if they want my feedback or if they're
Yep.
just venting. Which one
Very
is it?
important. Yep.
Yeah.
Very important.
Because at first I thought, I'm being helpful, and that was, the principle. I'm being helpful. Well, nobody asked you to be helpful.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, what?
There's a
I
big
thought,
difference.
yeah, I thought
There's a big
I could
difference.
just be helpful and that was enough. And if people don't want help, I shouldn't be offering it. I can offer it, but they say no. I shouldn't keep going with it because then I'm just being intrusive.
That's
And
a big way to start out a conversation, especially in a relationship that I found out myself is that are you asking for my, experience or suggestion, or am I just here to listen?
yeah,
And
and that's
usually
it.
that takes the sting out of them because then the other person knows that they can talk freely without being interrupted and then just vent. And then sometimes they actually want to know, hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah. And I think we've also maybe oversimplified it a little bit because when you're in the heat of the moment, this is
Yeah,
not going to be the
yeah,
first default
yeah,
that you go to.
yeah.
Hey, do you want my feedback? I've already started giving it 10 minutes ago. Why am I asking now?
Yeah.
I've already got this person heated,
No, but the
so
formula does work, right? Is
it
if
does.
we go into it, hey, I need to, and if I make that statement myself, hey, Ted, I need to bend your ear,
Yeah.
then that yeah, the sooner we identify it, the smoother it's going to go, right?
Yeah, I think that you just identified the key. The simplification that we may have
Yeah.
over is the sooner it's get done, the better. Because if you wait and it's
Does
heated
Ray have to,
already, forget
yeah,
it.
does Ray have to put on his white cape, get
Yeah,
on the horse, and come and save the world, or you just want to puke some stuff out, which is fine either way.
yeah. I have. We were talking about gifts that I have. People seem to just open up to me, whether
Yeah.
it's standing and in Chicago when I was on the train, people would just come up to me and their whole life story. Well, it happened when I was driving to Iowa. I stopped at a rest stop and I'm hanging out with the dog and she's eating dinner and drinking water. And the lady that cleans the rest area comes up and whole life story, dude, within like 30 minutes. She's just like, phew, mother abuse, father abuse. I'm just like, she doesn't want to hear anything I have to say.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I got a
Yeah.
little bit of that too, is that when um, we're out and about or whatever we're doing, is there's I don't know what it is, a persona or, whatever that might be called, is that there's some comfort when we end up walking into somebody else's world, whether it's at a, gas station or wherever it's at, is there is a peace or something that comes across that it has a different dynamic because, whoever I'm with, they go, that's weird. That's weird that that lady came up and talked to you like that. And I go, not for me.
Mm.
It happens more frequently than not.
Yeah. And sure, sometimes it is weird, like they overshare. Some
Yeah.
people overshare. I used to
Yeah.
overshare. And then I had to become, cognizant and mindful of the company in which I was and like we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, like the normal people don't need to hear about my war stories.
Right.
I'm going to scare them to death. I
Yep.
won't have a job because they're going to be
Yep.
like, we hired this guy. I'm a respectable,
Yeah.
pillar of the community where I'm at. And I want it that way. I like it that way. And I'm not being disingenuous by not sharing it. I'm just being, self-preserving by not oversharing things that are not important. They're not going to, that's just me wanting the spotlight on myself when I overshare.
Yeah.
I want this about me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
And
that's
then,
fine when other people want to do that. I respect it.
yeah, and
I
we
will
got
be
a
that
place to
safety.
go. Yeah, we got a place to go and we got work to do that we figure that stuff out for ourselves anyway, right?
We
Is
are
we could,
fortunate.
yeah, yeah. So I've definitely learned that too, is that my story, my share, I think somebody in the checkout line who's going through, that's like that's like it's like the kiddie pool, right? Where the mushroom is and the waterfalls coming out.
Oh yeah.
They ain't even got into the shallow end of the pool or the deep end of the pool
Mhm.
where I lived for quite some time.
Yeah. They're
So I
still
gotta know.
peeing over in the kiddie pool. Why is the water yellow? Ooh, and that brings up the point of like when I was walking around back in the day and I had that, the cartoon, that dark cloud above my head all the time. I
Yep,
couldn't figure out why. I don't
yep,
understand,
yep.
and I didn't have self-esteem. You know why? Because I wasn't doing esteemable things.
Right.
A self-esteem doesn't magically show up. It has to come from things that I'm doing. So if
Yeah.
I'm doing unwholesome stuff, right, all day, then of course I'm not going to feel good about myself come nighttime when I lay my head on that pillow,
Yeah.
right? My
And you can't
conscience is
fake
like,
it.
hey,
Yeah, you can't fake it.
not that. You
Who
can't
knows us
fake that
better than
until you
us?
make it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
better start doing the right thing. And we were saying too, like, when we were going through this, trying to figure out the video stuff, I'm going to try. And
Yeah.
Yoda said, there's do or don't do. There is no try. You know what I mean? There isn't.
Love it.
And my example for that would be, your cup of coffee. Try to pick it up, Ray. Try to pick up your cup of coffee. You didn't try, you picked it up.
Done.
Yeah, there is no try. How do you try to pick this up? Either you do or you don't. There's try, and that's my mistake too. I've made that mistake where people have told me, I'm trying. And in my head, that meant, oh, they've done something and the thing didn't work out favorably. When in reality, they didn't do anything. They actually
Yeah.
avoided
Right.
the whole thing. Yeah. And,
Right.
in my head, that doesn't make sense. When people say, I don't like that food. Have you ever ate it? No. How do you know that you don't like it? Right.
Yeah.
At
Right.
least sample it.
Try it.
Yeah. Try. Right. Like, eat a bite and then say,
Do
oh,
or
this is not
don't.
my thing.
Yeah.
Do or
Do
don't.
or don't. Don't talk about it if you don't know.
Yeah. So trying is, like it's a cute word, but if we're going to look at what it really means, it doesn't mean much.
So here's the part that really fascinates me about you and what we've experienced.
I'm my
Uh,
favorite topic, by the way.
yeah, yeah, we are. We're not
Yeah.
much, but we're we're
Yeah.
all we think about. So the question kind of goes along the lines, and I'm thinking about how we share, but the question is, what has life taught you that you couldn't have learned from a book? But with your dynamic of the education part really always impressed and still continues to impress me today is because I've never had that, your drive for finding and researching and experiencing life in ways that I don't, right? So do it or don't do it. But I live vicariously through you in a lot of ways, especially on the education part, because for whatever reason, um, life doesn't hit me that way, and I've not taken it upon myself to go after it that way. So,
Sure.
could you share a little bit about that?
Sure. And let me maybe address one thing too, is that it's not for everybody. It's the
Yeah,
education. And somebody said, like, I really admire you, Ted, for doing that. I just would never. Okay. And
yeah,
it's nothing to feel bad about. Some people want to do that, and other people, everybody has the key thing that I'm always interested in is helping people find what it is that does give them that,
yes, yes,
the thing that I have. And
yes,
mine just happened to be through here, right? And your first question was something that life has taught me that I couldn't have learned through a book. And that's any type of wisdom, right? That I have found, right? So that piece about mistakes, where they will keep repeating the same mistake, right? Like before I got married, I was getting into the relationships with gals. The gal would change, but the principles are always the same, right? Jealousy, right? Something, resentment, right? And until I was able to finally resolve that piece in myself,
yep,
that I'm not a jealous man. I don't have to be. If I trust the person I'm with, there's no reason to be jealous.
there
Either
you
I
go.
trust them or I don't. Those two do not live in the same space.
Right.
So, I make a joke, right? Like before my wife, I was dating this gal, absolutely not trustworthy, right?
Right.
I tried to extend trust. She was not worthy of that. And then I would catch myself doing things that are out of character for me, like reading her text messages. And she'd be texting with a bunch of different guys, and I'd be getting really worked up about this instead of accepting, like, hey, she doesn't really interest you in being monogamous in that way. She wants to have a bunch of different people, and
Right.
accepting that or not
Right.
accepting that. Either
Yep.
I'm cool with that and I will continue, or I'm not cool with that and I leave, right? And this time I happened to have enough self-respect where I left. And then I met my wife, and her text messages are all in Thai. So either I learn to read another language, or I sit there and copy paste, send them to myself and translate. And I was like,
Yep.
man, that's a lot of work. And then
Yeah.
I was like, wait, either I trust this woman or I
Bingo.
don't. I'm
Bingo.
not going to go through this whole, I have to learn a new language, or I'm going to copy paste text messages to myself. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore. I love my wife. I can be protective of her if somebody's being disrespectful, but jealousy is not something that mistake I learned from, and then we moved on to different mistakes. And now the
Yep.
mistakes are less and less, and they're new. That's one thing that I've learned in life and not in a book, is that once the mistakes start being new mistakes, I'm on the right path.
Yeah.
If they're
Right.
the same mistakes and pattern recognition, I could spot the same mistakes now, but when I was in the relationships, I was just like, great. And I didn't see that this same relationship, different person is a different, person, same relationship over and over again.
Yeah. And it's their side, it's that environmental, that outside stuff, then that behavior. I don't want nothing to do with that kind of behavior. You know what I'm saying? I don't want, because I'm not that guy either. I don't want to have to be responsible for if I'm not, if somebody is not trustworthy,
Yeah.
it's not my job to keep them in line by bad behavior that I don't even like. And, fortunately, I don't have the tools to work with either. I don't know how to go through somebody's phone, when's the best opportunity, all that kind of stuff. It's just something there's I don't know if I'm old enough, technology. I wasn't, you know, I'm 57. So
It's
the
a lot of
computer
work
came into
anyway.
my life. I didn't come into the computer's life,
Yeah.
and the juice is not worth the squeeze.
That's what I discovered. I'm not going to
Yeah.
do this. Either I trust her or I don't. I'm not going to play this game. And I was telling my friend the other day, maybe you want to have him on the podcast at some point, my friend Anais. Um, but I was telling him that, like, I don't negotiate with terrorists. That's one
Yeah.
thing
Right.
from George Bush that he
Yep.
doesn't negotiate with terrorists, neither do
Right.
I. And
Right.
in my head, that thing that, turns on me on a dime, right? Tell me to do something and then, oh, why'd you do that, idiot? That thing, I
Yep.
don't negotiate with that anymore. You know, it's, sometimes I'm kind. Hey, it's not your turn to talk right now. Go back and sit down, right? I could be
Yeah.
that, or shut the fuck up, man. This
Yeah.
is not helpful at all,
Yeah.
right? It's
Stop
either that or
immediately. Yeah.
stop
Reset.
immediately, or hey, man, this is not, your turn to speak. So please go sit down. The way I
All right.
talk
We
to
got,
myself is important too. It looks like we're
yeah,
up
that's
coming up
huge.
on 5.
Yeah. So maybe we'll do one more question and then see where we want to go from there.
Okay.
So this might take longer than 5 minutes, but you're pretty good. Um, who was seeing stuff in you before you were able to see stuff in yourself?
The good,
I
right? The
guess that
good.
could be good or bad, right?
Yeah. Everybody saw the bad. That's pretty glaring, right? And it's just human nature to pick apart somebody else, right? And they have the same defects as us. The only reason I could spot defects in other people is because I have them myself,
Because I got
and
them. Yeah.
yeah, sometimes I can spot unwholesome behavior that I don't personally do, but that's morals that I was brought up with. But most of the time when something irks me about another person, it's because I'm still struggling with it, or I've overcome it, and I'm judging them for not doing the same, right? Or not being at the same place in life as I am. My mom has always, always seen the best in me. She's never I don't think she, even when I was doing wrong, she didn't want to admit that that was me, and
Hmm.
she enabled me pretty hard for a while. And, you know, uh, God bless her, man. It maybe made things a little bit more difficult for me,
Yeah,
had
right.
somebody been like cut me off, maybe, but I don't
Yep.
know. That's neither here nor there. She did the
Right.
best she could, man, given the circumstances of what a, low down person I was at that time. She she deserves a spot at God's right hand up in heaven, right?
Yeah, right.
For that
Right.
alone. But she has always been somebody who's looked at me and was like, this is my son, and he's capable of good. He might just not be doing it right now, but
Yep.
he will eventually one day come back. And then I asked her a couple days ago, um, you know, I'm still scared to ask my dad, but I asked my mom, like, what's your favorite memory of us? And then
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one.
I shared mine with her. Mine were comedic, right? She was going down a water slide, and the pool was only 2 or 3 feet, and she's legs in the air, bro, drowning, flailing. I walk up to her and I'm like, just stand up. And she's like, oh, what? And to me, that was hilarious. And she's like, man, I don't know how to swim. I was like, you just had to stand up. She's like, oh, yeah, I didn't disorient it. I was like, whatever. But her favorite memory of me was this last time when I went into rehab and I came out and she didn't have to push me into any direction. I finally took responsibility for my own life. I got a job. I didn't have to be woken up to do it. And I have a routine where I do morning routine. I try every day to do things, right? And some days I'm successful, other days I fall short. But I get up, I try to not go on my phone right away. I'll go plug it in, let it charge. I try to get an hour to myself with no phone. I'll do
Yeah.
my meditation. I'll take the dog for a walk. Uh, I'll get centered. I'll take my heart medication. I'll drink maybe a cup of coffee. Some days it's the best. Other days it's just a cup of coffee.
Yeah,
Some
right.
days it's flavored. Other days it's black. Right. But I have these things that I do in the morning, and once I get those done, right, then I'm able to start pursuing the things that are on my list that I like to check off every day, right? That I tend to write things down and then I'll put them a little box next to it. And these are my things, my intentions for the day. And I start checking them off, right? And my mom said, like, she didn't have to hound me to do this anymore. She didn't have to like drop subtle hints like, hey, the downstairs needs cleaning. It was just clean when she got there. That was when she was most like her favorite memory was that she was. I think what she was trying to say is that she was finally able to breathe like that.
Yeah.
He's
The prayers
okay.
worked. Yeah, the
Yeah.
prayers worked,
The
right?
prayers worked. I think that was her favorite memory.
How about one of those conversations, one of those cups of coffees, Ted, that changed the direction of your life? What do you got for that?
Yeah. Remind me what yours was. You had one or you had more than one? Tell me one of yours and give me a minute to think.
Questions or one of my experiences?
Yeah, one of your cups of coffee.
Okay. So a lot of them happened just like today, where there was a storm coming through, tornadoes, lightning, um, and when I was living down in Noonan, Georgia, ran dirty for a couple years.
That's where you escaped to Noonan from Chicago, right? You ran
That's where
wherever you go, there you are.
I showed up again. Arr!
Mm,
But um, so then because the girl I was dating and her, she was from Chicago.
yeah. She
So
went with you?
she was the one that actually suggested us moving out there. And I go, yeah, sure, no problem. Nobody knows me, you know, but then
Yeah.
again, here I am. So then once I got in the rooms, I felt like I needed to put her back where I found her.
Hmm.
So we moved back to Chicago here. And then I plan her back here. My intention, I didn't know what was going on. I was probably 2 years in. And then uh the relationship was going sideways, the stuff you mentioned. I'm not going through their phones, whatever.
Sure.
So I pack up my
She didn't have a
stuff.
phone yet, right? This was
Yeah,
before.
right, right. So I pack up all my stuff. I got a small little truck, like a Ford Ranger maybe or something like
Hmm.
that,
Built to
and a U
last.
and a U-Haul. I mean, I had enough that I had a U-Haul, which kind of shocks me. Uh, and
It was all the stuff you couldn't pawn, right? I know, I
and
know.
the good stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and as I was driving back to Noonan, because my sponsor goes, yeah, come on. He had a property that had a little cabin on it, and it was great. So as I'm driving back down to Noonan, Georgia, 11-hour drive or whatever, it stormed the whole ride there. All that uncertainty of did I do the right thing? I'm early in the rooms, a lot of confusion going on. I had my purpose. I got her back where I found her.
Yeah.
Now what do I do? Right? Because I got that. Um,
I did the next right thing and I ran out of things.
and now what? And now
Hmm.
what? So I'm heading back, and you know, it was like God Almighty was speaking directly to me. Like I was in the eye of that storm, that whole ride. It
Yeah.
was, it was, it was lightning and, rain and all that kind of stuff. But there was a comfort in there for me that it was like the next keep following this path right here. And it drove me basically right into Noonan, Georgia. That storm before it kicked off. Um, and that was a huge next phase of development for me is because my palate was like clean. I was clean, and now let's go.
Yeah. Bring it on, right?
Bring it on.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
That's a good story.
And that's where those best cup of coffees became more frequent and more spiritual, and they became more implemented in my life. And um, it felt like I was finally a grown up. You know what I'm saying? That I was a,
Yeah.
a productive member of society. And uh, so
Yeah,
I'll
I
turn
have
it
that.
over.
I have that. So the reason I asked you to go first, I'm easy to empath, right? So I could easily identify what probably maybe some feelings you had in that experience were. Uh,
Yeah.
so a lot of it was like the new, right? What's going to happen? New stuff is about to happen. I feel good about myself. I remember I was brand new in the rooms too, and the guy I asked to sponsor me, he had broken his leg. I think he was like a union carpenter in working at McCormick Place.
Yeah, I
And
remember him.
yeah, so a roll of carpet fell or something, crushed his leg, broke his leg. He was out and he was still getting his disability checks and he couldn't leave the house. So I come over and I was like, what do you need, man? I'll go get you some food or something. He gave me his debit card and the PIN code. And
Yeah.
I was like, bro, do you know who I am? Think about this for a minute,
Yeah.
And he's like, just can you run to the bank, deposit this, pull out some cash, grab me some tacos, and I was like, yeah, I could do that, and I did that. I
Yeah.
didn't, I didn't take out more for
Yep.
myself. I
Yep.
didn't get tacos for myself because I didn't ask if that was part of it. He's
Yep.
like, when I got back, he's like, you should have grabbed some for yourself. I was like, you didn't say that, but
Throw everything out of the window. Throw everything
yeah.
out of the.
Super literal, man. Everything
Yeah.
was literally literal. What? I follow directions, but that's all I'm gonna do, right? And yeah, but there was no one moment where stuff, became clear to me. There is a tradition in Buddhism that says enlightenment happens like that, where everything just suddenly becomes clear.
Yep.
For me, it was I didn't have that. It happens in steps, and it's still happening today. I could still get, one of those ear ringers, where I'm just like,
Yeah.
wow, that really. And sometimes the newcomer's the one saying it. I just, I forgot it, and then they hit me with some truths, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
A lot of, like the saying, wherever you go, there you are. I was always looking to run away from something, and maybe if I go here or do this or do that, and it's not like that. It's the psychic change that needs to
Yep.
happen in order
Yep.
for me to be able to even start thinking about, how can I help? Well, maybe I need to help myself before I can start helping other people, right? And
Bingo.
then
Bingo.
once I started doing it for me and not because I wanted to get the law off my back or I wanted my parents to shut up or, I thought that, I would be more socially accepted if I did the next whatever it was. That's the empath again, like into, disarray where I was just like, what do people want from me? Because I'll just do that. I didn't take any responsibility for my life. And then I was like, okay, well, what actually needs to happen? What ought I to do was the question. So what should I do next? And I liked school, I liked learning. So I was like, okay, I went back to school. I didn't finish high school. I'm a doctor now, but I didn't finish high school. I dropped out. And then I went back to get my GED. I didn't study. I just took the test and I passed. That shows you that maybe that's not a very good test, or maybe I'm smart. I still have a hard time admitting that,
Yeah.
right? That I am intelligent. I'm intelligent, but I don't know that I'm smart, right?
Yeah.
Compared to the rooms I sit in with the brilliant people here at Briarcliff or, in any academic setting, it's easy to put myself down really quick, right? But um, I don't know, man, like a lot of things always bring up that, what ought I to do next kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well, I can relate to the part in early in the rooms as I was showing up because there was only two meetings a day in Noonan at
Newton
the
and
time.
Jordan. Yeah.
And they were both at the same place. And then it started expanding stuff. But uh good old Charles would come there, I'd be there at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning for the noon meeting. Because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't trust myself. Um and I'd show up there. He'd come because he'd open and close the meetings every day. Um, and he offered me the key to the clubhouse, and I'm
Mm,
like,
yeah.
no, no,
They had a big
Charles.
screen TV in
Yeah,
mine. You were there at Air Club.
yeah,
They gave me the keys.
yeah. And I go, no, not ready for that. Not quite ready for it. He goes, Ray. He goes, here's the lockbox. There's $25 in there. He goes, you wouldn't be the first one that ever tapped into that lockbox. I'll cover you. And it was just uh uh it was kind of, it goes back to one of the questions. What did people see in you that we didn't see in ourselves? And it was them, right?
Mm,
It was Charles's. Somebody did something to him. They gave him the key to the clubhouse. We were still washing ashtrays. It was pretty cool
I remember that.
because
I
we were
was I was at the
smoking.
tail
Yeah,
end of that.
yeah. And so there was plenty of work. He goes, listen, you've been an ashtray washing kind of guy since you walked in that door. He goes, now you get early access to the ashtrays. And I go, all right, fair
Mm,
enough. Let me in this thing.
yeah.
So
Uh,
those were the
you used to
moments.
smoke too? You were a smoker?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, me too. It's
yeah,
been 16 years now. I haven't smoked. How about you?
yeah.
In the
So I
as
don't
long as you've
smoke
been there?
cigarettes, but I'll smoke a cigar.
Okay.
I'll smoke a cigar.
Not daily. I don't see you smoking them that often.
I can't get in the groove in the summertime. It
Okay.
depends on what's going on, but um,
Mhm.
no cigarettes.
You
The
never smoked
cigar day,
cigarettes?
yeah, I did.
Oh,
I
you
did.
did. Okay. But
Yeah.
those done and now just a cigar?
Yeah, cigar day keeps the doctor away, I think is
Hmm.
what someone told
I'm
me.
here, so that didn't work. So I do have a little story about something that I did learn that kind of stuck out. It was my friend always called the spiritual principle of maybe. And I
Yeah.
didn't like I said, I was either white or black, yes or no, good or bad, right? There was no, I didn't know about the middle gray ground, right? So uh this farmer, he's got a kid, they're working in the field, right? The horse is doing the work, they're plowing, making the ground so they can plant the potatoes. The horse is pulling the cart. At night, they go to bed, everything's good. They wake up, the horse ran away, right? That's their livelihood. The horse does the work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all the villagers come and they're like, oh man, what a devastating loss, bro. Yeah, that's your farm. This is so awful. And the old man's like, maybe, He's just like not entertaining that, and so what do you do next? The next thing they're doing, they have to do this by hand. So the kid's out there doing the horse's job, pushing the plow best he can. They're still getting the work. It's just taking, 10 times longer. And the
Sure.
work's got to get done. So
Sure.
they go to bed, a week or so passes by, man, they're exhausted. They're like, yeah, maybe that horse running away was a bad thing. Right. And no sooner do they say something like that than they look over the hill, bro. It's the horse. And he's got like 6 or 7 wild horses with it. And he leads
Oh,
them all back into the stable and boom, they close it. Now they got a bunch of horses, wild Mustangs. And man, the people in the town hear about this. They come up, man, what a blessing. This is, look at your farm, man. You're never going to have to do, you can sell them and all. And this is so great. And the old man, is maybe,
yeah.
maybe, and he's still seeing, the horse ran away. I got new horses. Okay, we get the potatoes planted and the crops done. And, they're doing work. Everything's good. They're training the horses. Sold one of them, got some money. Things are going well. And something happens in the villages where they start arguing and, a couple of villages down, like war breaks out, right? And the old man's got horses. And what are they looking for war? We're looking for
Yeah.
horses to come. This was back in the day, man. They didn't have tractors. They didn't
Yep.
have weapons, your horse and back on the horse and you're going, right? He's got a healthy son, right? So the son's outside, doesn't know anything about the war. He's trying to break one of these horses, man. He's, one of the wild Mustangs. He's trying to tame it, man. The horse knocks him on the ground, man. The kid lands on the ground, boom, breaks his leg like the old man. The old man's is healed. Young man breaks his leg. Everybody's like, this is so awful, man. You broke your leg. And the old man's like, I don't know, maybe. Go to the doctor, wrap it up, man. The war is now getting big, man. They're coming in drafting people. They already took the guy's horses, so those are gone. Kid, they come in to draft him, leg broken. They did not take him because his leg was broken. The man was,
Bingo.
maybe,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
the story can keep going, as you can imagine, right? If you
Right.
want it to. But the lesson there is, everything is a blessing and a curse at the same time. And
Yeah,
it
right.
really depends on, how we want to navigate this thing, right? Everything could be good and everything could be bad. And when I'm able to see those two things, then they just start filtering in and I don't have a say-so on it. But when I notice them and I start connecting those dots, I'm in control of how these things are then interpreted, right? And what is the saying? When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Bingo.
Well, the way that old man was looking at things was, changing what the people were saying, right? You could go in with whatever people are saying, or you can make your own way of doing things, right? So then there's that.
Yeah,
I like
love
the
that.
parable with the emperor's new clothes too. That's an interesting one. You ever heard that one?
Tell me about that one.
That one was where these two swindlers, right? They're probably addicts, they got some trying to, pulling over on the emperor, and they're like, man, we're wizards. We got this new cloth here. It's invisible. And, we made a suit out of it for the emperor, man. You're going to wear it. And only people who are idiots, right? And are foolish and unworthy, they're the only ones that are unable to see this new material that we've made that's invisible, right?
Okay.
So the emperor's like, well, I can see. He put it on. He's walking around, not wearing anything, right?
Right.
He's up there giving speeches, and nobody's gonna say anything because they don't want to look unworthy or foolish or like they're maybe an idiot, because only idiots can't see it, right?
Right.
So one kid finally is like, Emperor's not wearing any clothes, naked, and a child shall lead them forward, right?
The honesty, right? Who's more honest?
Yeah. And the kid is neither foolish nor that. He's just honest.
Right.
He saw, hey, you're not wearing any clothes, man. And everybody else is just scared to say anything. I don't want to risk looking like, like that in front of my friends. And that, one thing I pull from that story is a lot of that identity thing. Like, where do people get their identity from?
Yep.
You know, like some of mine comes from work. I'm a professor. Some of it comes from my hobbies. I play Pokemon Go. I like collecting Pokemon cards. Sometimes I'm that. I like to read books. I like to drink coffee. I like to hang out with my friend Ray and do
Yeah, but
podcasts. All these
yeah,
things
man.
contribute to my reality or my real and my identity. And then it's that hat that I'm wearing. What hat am I wearing right now or today? Who am I? You know,
Yeah,
not much of my identity comes from political.
right.
So I'm not this or that.
Yeah,
My identity doesn't come from that. I look
right.
at, what are people saying versus what are they doing?
Bingo.
That's where, that's where
So
my
let me ask you this, following up. Um, what do you think keeps people, and maybe men in particular, from having conversations like this today? Is there a difference between, um, a blue collar and a white collar mentality for having these conversations, or um,
men
you
could
got
be men
anything
could be
other than
tricky
that?
for that.
Yeah,
Men sometimes I don't want to overgeneralize because I don't want to pigeonhole people or put them into a category. But a
right,
lot of the times men, myself included, I don't want to look weak in front of other people because that takes away from who I am. I'm a man,
yeah,
right? I'm
yeah,
not weak.
yeah,
And if I've been taught that expressing feelings is women's stuff, I don't want to look like a woman. So I'm not going to talk about my feelings because only
right,
women do that, right?
right,
So I don't want to look like a woman. I don't want to be weak because I'm a man. A man is strong. A man doesn't talk about their feelings. They grin and bear it, and they just go through it. And men have a higher suicide rate than women, but women uh, attempt it but are less successful than men. Men actually do it and carry it out, whereas
right.
women might attempt it, but they don't necessarily go through with it full blown. So
Yep, yep,
I think like the downfall of that is the pressure cooker effect, where men don't talk about them, they boil over until boom, and no pun intended, but literally,
yeah,
something suicide happens, or you have that party, the meeting that you're hosting about suicide
yep,
prevention, right? And
yeah.
that
And
that
that's what my
stops men.
sponsor, yeah, that's what my sponsor used to tell me, uh, that I had to keep on hearing it, keep on hearing it. It was one of the most important things to get right, to attend, get in the rooms, was leave your ego and your pride at the door and just show up the best that you can. And that was a huge, huge. I'm like, I don't think I got some ego, and I don't, I'm not feeling it all that great. So there can't be no pride. And come to find out, I kept bringing that shit, that stuff into the rooms,
Mhm.
and start chipping away at it.
The ego is almost identical to the disease. Once you think you have it like cornered, it finds a trap door and it's out. And you're like, wait, where'd you go? I
Yeah,
don't have that. I don't have
yeah,
pride. Of course you don't have pride. You're not going to admit that. You're a man. Why would you say I don't have pride? I'm not
yeah,
prideful, right?
yeah,
This guy, humble Joe. Like I would argue that immediately, as soon as you start calling yourself humble, you're probably not,
yeah,
because that's not how humility works, right?
yeah.
Humility, the
Especially if I
fact
want
that
to
I
be
am the most
known.
prideful in this
Yeah,
room
yeah,
is
yeah.
automatically, I'm the most, humble person in the whole world. It means you're not.
And
And
I think,
it's
I
tricky,
think,
man, these things with men and
yeah.
women and being human in general. How are
And
we
it
supposed
doesn't
to
matter. It
navigate
doesn't
it?
matter blue collar, white collar, right? I mean, is it any different, now that you're in your arena, because you were in the construction world too?
Yeah. No, I mean, man, it's just a matter of what is the saying? Like your network determines your net worth. That my
Yeah,
friend and
right.
I said. Yeah, so
Yeah,
the people I hang out with now and the people I surround myself with are very, very different than what I used to. So whoever your most five innermost people are, this is what I study, the social network piece,
yep,
is like we're gonna gather most of our identity and stuff from the people we hang out with the most. And
yeah,
that's the dangerous part about isolation is that
Yep.
we cannot spot self-deception on our own, and we start believing all the crazy stuff that goes on in our heads instead of just seeing them as thoughts that, like a cloud, just go and dissolve, instead of attaching to every thought that I have and believing this is true, and sharing them with somebody else. Hey, does this sound crazy to you?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
isolation, we don't have that. We start
Yep.
believing our own nonsense,
Yep.
right? Is
Yep.
that's I don't know about blue collar or that. I don't know, because it doesn't boil down to that for me. It becomes more of, who am I surrounding myself with? Where is my information coming from? Are these trusted sources? Are they also crazy? You know, because a lot of times people, the information just perpetuates, like that game of telephone with the thing. You tell
Yeah.
somebody a whisper, they've
Yeah.
changed it because they're deaf in
Yeah.
their left ear, and that's where you
Yep.
whispered.
Yeah.
Right? And then they tell somebody else the wrong thing, and shoo, gone. That is more of a, like people. So if we're going to go left and right, one gets their news from this source, right? One gets their news from this source. They're both idiots, right? And they're both spreading propaganda. And it's just, which propaganda do you want to believe? Because they're both, news isn't what it used to be, right? You know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
News is not news. It's, these are my opinions and I think you should believe them because
Right.
we're on the same side. And if you don't believe them, then you're not a good whatever side you're on,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And
Right.
that's not, the news is not that. The news should be, this is what happened, make your mind up now about it. Not anymore. Now it's, this is what happened, and also this is how you should feel about it. Oh, really?
Here's what we found. You decide.
Yeah,
Right.
that's the way I remember, like Ted Koppel. He
Yeah.
would tell you something and then
Yeah.
leave it on the table, and you'd be like, I wonder what
Yeah.
that meant. Like, and then
And
you
them are
start,
conversation
yes,
starters, right? And then,
water
at
cooler
at water
conversations.
cooler, cup of coffee, whatever it might be.
Hmm. And it's difficult to do when people are already, pre-registering this stuff for you. That's also how, in another, maybe at some point in time, we should sit down and talk about what social media has really doing to society as a whole, because I
I
don't
love
feel
it.
like that's being talked about nearly enough as what it should be. Because this thing has drastically altered the way we interact and talk and everything to other people. And we're just pretending like, oh, no big deal.
Well, that'll be good because I am not a big fan of the electronic leash, we used to call it,
Yeah.
you know, and then these social medias and all that kind of stuff. I was not on social media at all
Yeah, I remember.
8 months ago or whatever it's been, December. I mean, I had a LinkedIn, whatever, but I sure wasn't on it all the time.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? So since I started Wellness Worksite Project and, trying to carry the message of the uh, uh, suicide prevention, because that's something I want to get upstream, right? Because there's a lot of stuff for the post after somebody commits suicide.
Yeah.
But the upstream stuff is what the gap is, where I see the gap missing.
Yeah.
And, it's a big percentage, it's a big percentage for the prevent, so that we don't have to deal with the post, the afterwards, because
That
that's, go ahead.
It reminds me of a story that I heard before too. And I don't know, man. I've read some literature that says people really learn from stories.
Yeah.
They're able to pull from a story. So
Grass. Yep.
there's this village, right? It's in a valley, so in between two mountains, right? River runs on the side of it, and people live in their lives, man. And every couple of years, the flood happens, wipes out the whole village, right? They bring in the specialists, the construction crews, they rebuild. 5 years, boom, another flood wipes them out again. Bring in the construction crews, the labor, the counselors, rebuild better. They rebuild better. Flood comes again, wipes them out. The flood's getting stronger too. Eventually, they bring in somebody like me or you who's actually interested in prevention, right?
Yeah.
I come in there, you come in there, and we start looking around and we're gathering information, what's going on upstream. We finally, one of us goes upstream and we're like, hey, the flood keeps happening because this river keeps doing this. Maybe we should build a dam
Yeah.
in the river and the floods stop. And they're
Yeah.
actually able to grow and the valley becomes bigger and the city becomes thriving and they don't have to keep rebuilding. They can focus on betterment instead of rebuild, you know?
Problem solved. The river, we have solved the river problem.
We've diverted the water. We built a dam. Now we actually have electricity. What the, we're
Love it.
using the water for good.
Yeah.
But if you're just going to keep rebuilding every couple years, man, I don't know that that's a solution. I'd
No.
rather go upstream, like you said, find out what that gap is. What's going on here? We need to build a dam because the river keeps breaking the banks, keeps flooding the village. How do you stop the flood? You got to address that.
Yeah.
So I
And
like that story. That's a really good
that
story.
yeah, that's the idea about it, is behind that cup of coffee are these conversations, right?
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, I remember as an apprentice going to get coffee for the crew. They'd all put in their McDonald's order, or, where 7-Eleven, wherever we were at. And 9 times out of 10, I'd get everything on that list. We'd write it down, and um, uh, um, I'd come back with that stuff. But the cup of coffee seems like a bonding point for those kind of conversations. So whether it's, did the Bears win, did they lose, did the Hawks, whatever the hot topic is, and then so that mentality is already there. Now we're just bringing it between two people talking and having these conversations.
Yeah, which I think is, at the end of the day, what would I want to listen to? I'd want to listen. This is what I was reflecting on before the pie. What would I want to listen to? A couple of
Yeah.
people talking about, what they did to get to where they are, where they were at one point. Like any good story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? And we're
Yep.
approaching the end of this
Yes.
show right now, right? And
Yes.
what were some takeaways that you had on this, Ray, on this particular conversation?
You beat me to that one. I had that one down too.
Yeah. I
So
saw the clock though, so I was like, instead of like 10 minutes, I was like, I'll just ask Ray a question and wrap it up. I'll go after you, or you want me to go first? Up to you.
Yeah, you go first and then I'll follow up.
So the thing is, like, I did a lot of talking, right? So it's I was just saying things that I already know, right? But your stories, I remember you were saying that, the noon in Georgia, the storm, and feeling comfortable in that storm, right? That stuck out to me, man, because I remember I was an agent of chaos at some point. I liked being in the middle of conflict. I felt very safe in that conflict, right? And as social media progressed, I had an alter ego social media account, right? Wasn't my name, it wasn't my picture. I would just say all sorts of dumb stuff, man, because I was anonymous and I got to hide behind the keyboard, right? And I don't do that anymore, but at the time it allowed me to really learn about, people and how they interact and what they're willing to say to somebody that they don't know or can't see. They're just like, whatever, all bets are off, man. I get to talk to this person any way I want because they're anonymous, they're not real, and there's no consequences to what I say. Whereas when I was growing up, you would say something smart, boom, you would get checked, right? And now nobody checks you
it's
like
not even
that.
allowed no more.
No. And a couple of times I've seen it happen where people might have lost jobs, but all they did was sue them and get money anyway. So really, there was no lesson to be learned there, And these are dynamics that we might want to, at some point, figure out how this is different than the real world. Because if we're going to take the stuff we're doing online and it's going to eventually bleed into real life, we shouldn't be talking to people the way we talk to them online, as if there's no consequences or no, anything to what we say. What we say means nothing. Well, then I could just say whatever I want and do the total opposite, and that's going to be fine. And that's what we've come to expect from politicians. They say whatever they want, they do a completely different thing, and then they lie about it, and we're just like, oh, okay. That's not okay. That's not okay. There's no integrity there, right? No. Integrity is doing what you say you're going to do and, being a person of the word, of your word, right? And if they don't have that, then they're probably not a good leader, right? I don't want to follow this person anywhere, right? And we should also differentiate that if we're going to be different on social media than we are in real life, we need to draw those boundaries and be pretty distinct about what those are, right?
Yeah, right.
For everybody, not just
Right.
myself, but everybody.
Right.
So when you were
So
talking, I thought about that.
yeah, let me ask you this, because I think we got about 5 minutes.
5. Yeah.
So if you were sitting across somebody who's struggling right now, over the best cup of coffee, somebody new walking in the rooms, whatever,
Yeah.
what would you want that person to hear?
Sure. Stuff that I heard that was cool was like, yeah, you're not alone. Uh, focus on the similarities and not the differences. The
Bingo.
similarities are where, differences are super easy to find. Like in our human nature allows us to do that, right? It takes work to look at the similarities. But once I started looking at the similarities, skin color disappeared, racial, ethnic, any disappeared, gender, any sex, gender, those are different, disappeared. I think that didn't matter anymore. It mattered was what they were saying. What can I learn from this? Should I put it in my back pocket for when I need it later? Because
Yep.
all these things are, going to keep me clean.
Yep.
So, I like to take the person, if I see them and they're new, I'd like to ask them, what's going on? What brings you here? Right? That's the big one. Why are you here? What happened that brought you here? Something. I got arrested. Got to get this paper signed. Okay. Me too. That's how I got here. And I just stayed. And then, let's go out to eat. I try to be inclusive. I like being inclusive, asking them what brought them here. And big thing that I try to always do is I try to meet them where they are. I not expect them to meet
Bingo.
me where I am. And
Right.
then once I meet them where they are, I'm able to kind of figure out what it is, what kind of world they live in, and what principles they are operating under, and then slowly start to question those principles, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, you think it's okay to steal a Red Bull from the gas station? uh, you didn't earn that, right? And I'm not going to get into, but you shouldn't take that which is not given, right? So then I start testing their worldview, right? And their worldview is not simply, it's who they are. These are the things that govern their behavior. So
Yeah.
I start, I get in there and start dismantling that. That's my
The
system.
real relatable part for me was don't look for a loophole early on in the rooms,
Yeah.
is look for the similarities, because if you take out that, if I take out that magnifying glass, I'll find a loophole. So
Yeah.
am I looking to find something different, or am I looking to find that eject button?
Yeah. The loopholes are a big deal because trap door, as I call them, same, right?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
constantly looking for an escape or a
I want an out.
justification.
Yeah, I want
Yeah.
out. This was great for 30 days or 60 days or whatever it was,
Yeah.
but my
The big
pattern is I'm a
the early
repeat.
one for me was really big was reservations. So
Oh yeah.
reservations are like RSVP sending to your
Yep.
thing. I'll be back later when this happens, right?
Yeah.
When I get a
Yeah.
job and I get a
Yeah.
girlfriend and all that, I'll be back and then we could party again, right? Or that then I'll negotiate with terrorists later. Is just give me some break now, but when this happens, I'll be back, right?
And that's the day at a time mentality that was so a spiritual awakening 2x4 that I used to go into the retread as I was a retread, and I go, yeah, I could do 60 days, no problem. And then at 55 days I'd be shaking and stuttering, and then once I got to Noonan, Georgia, my guy goes, quit counting, Ray. He goes, I'll count for you. He goes, when you're 30, 60, 90s, I'll let you know.
I'll tell you.
I'll get you. And I'm like, wow, never looked at it that way before, right? That aha moment of it's just about today. You mentioned it earlier. What can I do today? Do I get up early? Do I attack today as if it's, and when I'm cycling in that good area, is I'm out there before I'm waking up before the alarm clock, right? I'm not
Yeah.
hitting snooze 5 times. As I'm doing my exercise, I want to hear the bird. I'm waking the birds. I'm chirping before the birds are chirping
Yeah.
at 3 o'clock in the morning. How about that?
One thing that I would want the newcomer to know is that reservations rob us of our recovery, right?
Yes.
So When we rid ourselves of reservations, we surrender. And surrender to men doesn't mean that you've given up. It means
Yeah.
that you've realized that the fight is fixed. This is a
Yes.
Don King production,
Yeah.
and the winner has already been predetermined, and it ain't fucking you.
Bingo.
Yeah.
All right, Ted. I
Love you,
appreciate you
man.
sitting down, having the best cup of coffee with me. Love you. I don't know where all these conversations are going to lead, but that's really the point, right? If one conversation helps another person feel a little less alone, make it easier to ask for help, then that's all worthwhile. One cup of coffee, one conversation, one person at a time. Thank
Thanks
you,
for
bro.
having me,
Love
brother.
you. Have a
Love you too,
great
man.
day. Peace.